This is Bill Newman, WHMP.
Welcome to NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio with erstwhile Poet Laureate Rich Michelson. Rich?
Okay, my guest today, Ross Gay. If you know anything about the poetry world, you will know that his latest book, Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, has placed him in the spotlight. He won the Kingsley Tufte, the National Book Critics Circle Award, finalist for the National Book Award in Poetry, an NAACP Image Award. This book is everywhere, and most important, it deserves to be everywhere. I think this is one of the, well, it might be the best book I've read this year, which is saying a lot because we were published on the same day by the same publisher.
And when is that national holiday, Rich? What's the date?
and as I told Ross, he soaked up all my PR. It's an amazing book.
At least he's not holding on to that.
Yeah, right. And you will be able to hear Ross read tonight at 7:30 p.m. at the Helen Hills Chapel in Northampton. Be there. If you can't make it, tomorrow, the Andrew Solke Memorial Reading at Hampshire College at 4 p.m. That's tomorrow, Wednesday, December 8th. Today, Tuesday, December 7th, 7:30 at the Helen Hills Chapel. Welcome, Ross.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you here. So this is a book that hopefully we're going to try to lower Bill and Monty's blood pressure a little bit from that first session. This is
because it's really embarrassing.
You should have heard us off the air.
It's just a disruption when they have to carry the bodies out in the middle of the show.
I know.
This is a book filled with gratitude, compassion, joy, love of the earth, simple things. It's a positive book, but it does not ignore the racism, addiction, murder of blacks. You managed to take all that into your poetry and still be joyous. Mm-hmm. Were you an upbeat kid? I mean, is this?
I don't know. You have to ask my mom. I think I feel like yeah. I mean, the question is like, is one does one need to be constitutionally sort of upbeat to write poems that that can reflect that or something like that? I don't know. I try to be. I mean, this book is actually a kind of meditation on or inquiry into or even in some way maybe like a map toward trying to approach joy. And when I think of joy, I'm not thinking about like being happy and, like I got a good cookie or something. I'm thinking about like the complex, rich kind of joy that I think of as like an adult joy, which carries along with it the profound sorrow that being alive means, So, yeah.
Well, I think, especially, since this book has come out, the political situation has gotten worse.
Yeah.
The country's depressed.
Yeah.
And so I think that your book is more necessary now than ever. Mm-hmm. It gives us a way to look at these, problems and try to work our way through them. Mm-hmm. I'd like to just to give people a sense. I want to make sure we get in some poems. Mm-hmm. So I'd like you to read something from the book.
Okay.
And let's go from there.
Yeah, I'll read this poem, Patience.
We need it.
Okay. Patience. Call it sloth, call it sleaze, call it bummery if you please. I'll call it patience. I'll call it joy, this, my supine congress with the newly yawning grass and beetles chittering in their offices beneath me, as I nearly drifting to dream admire this so-called weed which, if I guarded with teeth bared my garden of all alien breeds, if I was all knife and axe and made a life of hacking, would not have burst gorgeous forth and beckoning these sort of phallic spires, ringleted by these sort of vaginal blooms, which the new bees, being bees, heed. And yes, it is spring, if you can't tell from the words my mind makes of the world, and everything makes me mildly or more hungry. The worm turning in the leaf mold, the pear blooms howling forth their pungence like a choir of wet-dreamed boys hiking up their skirts, Even the neighbor cats shimmy through the grin in the fence, and the way this bee before me, after whispering in my ear, dips her head into those dainty lips, not exactly like one entering a chapel. And friends, as if that wasn't enough, blooms forth with her forehead dusted pink, like she has been licked and so blessed by the kind of God to whom this poem is prayer.
Beautiful. Ross Gay is reading tonight at 7:30 at the Helen Hills Hill Chapel in Northampton. So you're a gardener. That poem was filled with gardening. Yeah. I know that you are a founding board member of the Bloomington Community Orchid, a nonprofit free fruit for all food justice and joy project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Bloomington Community Orchard is an amazing. What I think, I love that food justice and joy project. I love when people introduce me; they get to say that.
Yeah,
it's just one of my favorite phrases in the world. It's this project that was started. It was the sort of vision of a young woman named Amy Countryman. It's actually a project that she did as an undergraduate thesis project. But it's basically a kind of. It's an orchard of 100 fruit trees or so, all kinds of fruit trees, and 100 or more fruit bushes, and all kinds of other plants and stuff. But the thing is that it's this incredible, what I think of as sort of civic experiment, and it's a kind of it's so far it's pretty much entirely volunteer organization, and it's this experiment to me in how to sort of be neighbors, how to love one another, and it's this thing that started with this young woman who had this project, and she proposed it to the city, and the city said, well, if you can show support for the project, then we'll support you. And, there was support for the project. And then we sort of continued dreaming this thing into being. Many, many, many people collaborated in dreaming this thing into being. And this thing, the kind of call of the orchard is free fruit for all. That's the call of the orchard, And so there are hundreds and hundreds of people who gathered themselves, worked, put in hours and hours and hours of labor to think about how to feed their neighbors.
Wow. See, this is something that we'd love to see spread around the country, get people working together, joyous. I want to jump into a very short poem, a small needful fact, which I think, again, follows from this.
Yeah. A small needful fact is that Eric Garner worked for some time for the Parks and Rec Horticultural Department, which means perhaps that with his very large hands, perhaps, in all likelihood, he put gently into the earth some plants which, most likely, some of them, in all likelihood, continue to grow, continue to do what such plants do, like house and feed small and necessary creatures, like being pleasant to touch and smell, like converting sunlight into food, like making it easier for us to breathe.
That is an absolutely amazing poem. It's for me to be able to take Eric Garner's death and turn it into something. Not positive, but turn it into a beautiful moment. Is just an amazing feat. I think you all need to come out tonight, 7:30 at the Helen Hills Chapel. Hampshire College tomorrow at 4 p.m. if you can't make that. A poet we've had on this show a couple of times, my friend and former schoolmate, Mark Doty, had just put on his Facebook page, he just heard you read, and he wrote, I've been going to poetry readings for 47 years, and I could count the ones that moved me this much on fewer than my 10 digits, talking about a reading that you gave. Right. And I hope people can make it out. So you used to act. We'll see some of that at the reading tonight.
We're going to have performance art? Really?
You know how to get a crowd. The poetry is great. So you're right now. You've wrote a beautiful essay, Thoughts on Mercy and Beekeeping, about being stopped by the cops yourself and being pulled over. And a line that struck me is that I decided to imagine the police in general, and this cop pulling me over in particular, as doing what I imagine a policeman should spend his time doing, making our community safer. And being able to think that way in this time, and be able to keep your own self calm. I think in a sense the essay is very much like your poetry. You make everything more human than we thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, in the essay, what I'm trying to do is really interrogate the imagination. Like, what are the ways that our imaginations have been broken? And what are the possible ways that our imaginations can be mended? And which is a deep and collaborative question. How do we mend our imaginations? That's
the question.
Yeah.
Poetry helps.
Yeah, for sure.
It helps get us through the day. You're writing now. Did I read you're writing something about black people in farming?
Yeah, I'm really writing about my own experience as a gardener and orchardist and homesteader, you could say. I'm curious about the sort of some of the questions about our relationships to the land and the sort of generative metaphors, the sort of generative opportunities that being in the land offers. So, and I'm really thinking about my own experience as it relates also to other people's experience. And one of the things that I really want to do is sort of talk about my garden.
That's what it comes down to, right? Yeah.
I love doing that.
Write books, write essays, but ask Ross about his garden.
I can go on.
Yeah, I mean, let's ask you. Do you spend a lot of time gardening?
Oh yeah.
Do you have a garden at your home as well as the community garden?
I do. Yeah.
You're in Indiana.
Yeah, I live in Bloomington, Indiana. Yeah, I have a pretty busy garden. Was out of town I was in Boston most of last year, but I have I have a lot of perennials. I have many fruit trees. I just live in a regular little urban lot. I have a lot of fruit trees. I have these fruit called gumi, which I love. I have these fruit called Nanking cherries, a little tart cherry that I love. I have raspberries and blackberries and strawberries and plums, 2 plum trees and peach trees that, one of them's a volunteer. I cut it down once thinking it was a mulberry tree and it came up and I have 2 peach trees.
You take that. You're going to cut me down. We'll be back. Never say die.
I know the peach tree that I cut down, it makes these fruit that are like more resistant. It's real humid out there and there's a lot of rot on the, stone fruit get rot out there, but this peach tree is more resilient. I have figs. I was eating figs in Indiana. I was eating figs off of,
You've got some very beautiful sexual figs in some of your poems. I got to tell people, the title poem, A Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, is just such a beautiful poem. It's sexy. It's everything. It encompasses everything. I assume you'll probably read that tonight if people make it out. Listen, for all you who've been listening to this program for a long time, take my word. Buy this book. It's absolutely amazing book, Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude by Ross Gay. Ross will be reading tonight at 7:30 at the Helen Hills Chapel in Northampton. He will be reading tomorrow, Wednesday, December 8th at 4 p.m. at the Taylor Room at the Kern Center at Hampshire College. We're so glad to have you here with us in this area. You made these guys they look more relaxed than they did when we walked in.
And before you go, I want to know the secret to how you do this. How do you stay so calm? And it's a preternatural kind of calm. How do you do that?
That's on the outside.
All right, so now we all feel better. Thank you, Ross Gay. This is Rich Michelson from NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio. And thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.